Hello, everyone. Hello. Welcome to the second part of today, the Artist Talk. My name is Inga Mutimura. I am the curatorial assistant of NAOMI Projects. A little bit about me. I'm from Southwest Michigan, really small town, and I came to Chicago to pursue creativity and art full time. I focus in singing, writing, curation. I also am in childcare, so if you ever need a babysitter, let me know. And I am currently training to be a full spectrum doula, so a lot. Super grateful to have everyone here. Thank you to our sponsors, the Design Museum and Cocktail Cocktail, Johnny Walker and Kudo Social. And thank you to Compound Yellow, Laura, for holding space for us, as well as our videographer and sound team. We love it. Yeah, so I'll hand it off to Mac, and they can introduce themselves.
I'm Mac. I'm a ceramic artist. I'm based here, but I'm from a small town outside of Boston. I've been wheel throwing for like 15 years. It's such a important part of my life. I work full-time as an artist, but I also teach and work as an artist assistant. And yeah, I'm just excited to get into this and make sense of everything that you all just witnessed. And yeah, talk about the process and how the show came together.
All right.
And now we have Justin.
So, if you don't know me already, my name is Justin Dwaun Redding. I'm the founder of NAOMI Projects, which is a curatorial platform all about creating cultural moments. I've been curating art exhibitions, at least the last 10 years. And outside of NAOMI Projects, I'm also the co-founder of Alice Shea, which is a curatorial collective, a culinary collective, all about telling the story of culture, the culture of the diaspora, starting in West Africa, then spreading through food.
Great. All right, now that we've done introductions, let's just go straight into the artist talk. So the first question that I have is for you, Mac. I want to ask, what inspired you to reinterpret the concept of sin through the lens of celebration rather than condemnation?
I think that the last couple of years have been very challenging for me in my personal life, and I found myself kind of internalizing a lot of shame that was surrounded by a lot of these ideas in the show, and I wanted to make space for these like really heavy emotions to like reinvigorate them, for them to feel life-giving instead of full of like shame, or that I needed to be less or feel less, and instead I wanted to be like, no, actually, these are the things that make me who I am, and leaning into the hedonism of it all and discovering that through the work that I make. I mean, wheel throwing is very sensual, as you all just witnessed, and I think that it's been very empowering to make this work, to stake a claim, make monuments to sins, the things that we are told that we can't have or we shouldn't feel, and leaning into it, celebrating it.
So you feel like it was an exploration of sin, but also an exploration of yourself as well?
Yes, sin and shame. I think that one of the questions, which maybe you'll get to, that people will ask me about is like my relationship to religion, because this work is like the 7 deadly sins is from Catholicism, and I think for me, religion has always felt like something that I could play with and use as like a literary device almost. And the 7 deadly sins serve as like a conceptual narrative, but I'm not interested in like religious iconographies, and in fact I want to make fun of them, or like, you know, the show is very tongue-in-cheek. I mean, from the name itself, I'm like poking fun at shame and why we experience it. Why does it matter? I mean, if we want to talk about a useless emotion, it's shame, rather than all of the other ones.
All right, so Justin, what drew you to Mack's work?
Oh man. So my first time coming around their work was at Heaven Gallery a couple years ago. And I don't know, it was just like my first time actually experiencing ceramic art. It not being just like cups and plates and things like that are boring, but actual like forms being manipulated into art. And I was like, this is dope. I love this. I want to know more about this. I want to engage with this more.
Well, Justin, they are all cups and bowls and plates, as you just saw.
Okay, so how did you approach curating So You Won an Award or something? Was it an idea that you had on your own, or was it more of a collaborative thing, like you came together?
So I think about like the role of the curator a lot, specifically like in modern times. I feel like it's no longer that old stuffy guy in the basement of a museum.
Yeah.
And so with that, as we approach this exhibition, I'm like, okay, this is also my first time producing an exhibition with a solo artist in 10 years.
Oh, wow.
And so with that, I had to think about it like this isn't a group exhibition where the curator is like front and center trying to orchestrate all these different artists to create this exhibition that is this singular piece of art that is the curators. That's not what this is. It's looking at it more so as like the curator as a producer and creating this platform for Mack to show amazing work. Mm-hmm. And so with that, they had already created this piece. I think it was Envy was the first one that was already created. Mm-hmm. And it was like, they came to me with this idea, like, let's do the 7 deadly sins. Let's do that. And I was like, let's do it. How can I help make this happen for you? And then from there, we just continued to develop these ideas for programming, exhibition, and everything. And I'm like, all right, how do I show up within this space that I'm not used to and still kick ass?
Okay, so it was a teamwork makes the dream work type of situation. Yes. Okay, that's great.
Well, the second piece that I was working on was Pride. And I was working on it like before Justin and I met the second time to like do the show here, because we knew we wanted to do a show together, but we didn't know what it would look like. We didn't know where we would be able to put it on. And at the same time, Laura actually reached out to me after seeing my work from Berlin last summer, and it just kind of all came together organically. But when Justin came to my studio in October, I showed him some sketches that I had, and for Pride, I really liked the idea of turning it into a trophy and it having these like real clear handles, and that of course a trophy was sort of the epitome of Pride. And then I was thinking about all of the pieces just being variations of trophies, of shrines, monuments to these sins. And that was like the baseline, was like, what if we transformed this space into a trophy hall and spotlit these pieces as if they were things that you would find in like some stuffy trophy hall in high school, and that the pedestals being like stained this like dark wood felt really important, because I wanted to really like make that visual language super clear. And we got these like gold plaques custom made. One idea that somebody had was like, if these are trophies, then maybe you should list people that would have gotten them.
That might have been a little problematic.
Yeah, but then I was like, I don't know if I should make enemies.
Might have been fighting. That's beautiful. That actually walks me into the next question. Did you have any, because you talked about not wanting to necessarily focus in on religious iconography. So did you have any historical or art history references that you referenced to or anything like that?
I think that I have ceramic artists that I'm always thinking about. George Orr is this he was making these crazy pots on the side of the road in Mississippi in the late 1800s, and he was not well known, not celebrated in any way, but he was doing things that to this day I've not seen, and it's something that I always try to emulate, where he has these motifs of collapse in all of his pieces. Now he is you can't get any of his stuff because it's it was all collected by people who would just have boxes of his stuff that they would find in attics or garage sales, he's such a big kind of niche collectible artist now. But I was looking at some of his, he has these jars that have these super elegant handles to them. And so I was thinking a lot about referencing his work and these motifs of waves and collapse. You should all look up his work. If I had a PowerPoint, I'd show you.
A little quicker.
Justin, are there any people or spaces or collectives that you take inspiration from when you go into curation?
Oh man, anyone I take reference from? No one specific. I can throw out a couple names. Thelma Golden, the New Museum, of course. Not the New Museum, the Studio Museum. That's my main person. Hans Ulrich Obrist at the Serpentine Gallery. He's doing amazing work. I don't think we can really count him as a curator, but the Astor Gates is a huge inspiration for me. Those are probably the big three for me.
So how do you feel the message of NAOMI Projects connects to what Mack Baker was doing with their exhibition?
I think it's more so from the standpoint of thinking through how this work can engage the community, it can build community, and can how programming can be produced to continuously get people excited about this amazing work, and looking at it from that angle. Also, just as a person, 7 Deadly Sins is one of those things that's always been a source of inspiration for me. I remember when we sat down and we were talking and they brought it up, I was like, yo, Dante's Inferno, the Full Metal Alchemist, the anime 7 Deadly Sins, and just thinking through these things, I'm I'm super interested in these things as concepts.
Okay, great. So Matt, can you walk us through the process of transforming these moral concepts into physical items? When you thought of gluttony or pride or lust, were there certain visual images or certain feelings that you tapped into in order to create them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that I've been building this visual language for many years now. I'm making these stacks, which is what I threw for you today. And this show was really exciting for me because I felt like it was an opportunity to take this vocabulary and apply it to a conceptual framework. But yeah, I think that pride was the first jumping off point where I started to really think about this idea of a trophy or a cup, and how silly awards are, and award ceremonies. So that was also another reason why I dressed kind of nice and then wanted to cover myself in clay, because I wanted to make fun of the pomp and circumstance around giving awards, and yeah, I wanted to play with it. And all of the forms are built from, like, for gluttony, I was thinking a lot about cakes and like bellies and curves. And I wanted to just sort of keep these. It was a form that I built really carefully. It looks like it's heavy, but if you actually pick it up, it's not. And that's because I let the pieces dry really slowly so that they wouldn't buckle too much, that they would maintain their belly. And that was a really exciting piece for me. I mean, all of them have been, I've learned something from each of them. The way that I built Sloth was also very careful because I wanted to, you're basically just trying to trick gravity a little bit when you're working in this way, where I stacked all of these cups that were slightly smaller, each of them slightly smaller, and then I put, while they were still wet, put them inside of one another, and then carefully just let the piece lean over. But I didn't want it to happen too quickly, and I didn't want it to happen when the pieces were too dry, because then they would crack and like fall apart completely. So there is like a lot of technique and a lot of thinking that goes into how I make each of these pieces, even though it might not appear that way, or that I'm just sort of sculpting. I mean, if I'm building like a piece like this that I did today, it was all done in one sitting, but if I were to make it bigger, I would let the pieces kind of dry in between and like more carefully stage it all out. But there's also something so improvisational about the way that I work that I love, and that was why I wanted to work with Jeff, because I draw a lot of inspiration from jazz and improvisational like music. That's something that I really love, and I wanted to be able to like have a dialogue around the way that I work so that I could really explain what I meant. Because I think like for years people have been asking me, okay, I kind of get it. I see that there's like bowls in the work, but like, can you explain it to me? And actually, why don't you just send me a video of you working in your studio? And I'm like, well, I don't do that, and I'm not very good at it. So I wanted this to be an opportunity to show everyone what I really meant when I was like, well, they're all pots. Yeah. They are. They're all boring pots that I carefully stack, sculpt, round out. I had a friend of mine who is an arts writer come to my studio once, and he was like, all right, Mac, you're going to show me how you do this. I want to know how you do this, and I want to do it. Because something that I talk about a lot with my work also is this idea of failure, like sort of controlled failure. And my friend was like, well, if it really is just about failure, I've never done ceramics. It should be easy for me to do this. It was like he was trying to prove a point to me. And so I set him up, a wheel across from mine. We sit down, we get into it. I show him how I do it. And I start throwing these forms, and I'm like, and then, you kind of start with the base, and then you just kind of, mess it up. Just lean into it. Be like, just have fun with it. So he starts working, and I'm working, and he's kind of watching me, and he's like doing what I do, and then he looks at it and he's like, Mac, this looks like shit. I like had our pieces next to each other, and he's like, there is something in the way that you work that is not translatable. Like this, I'm failing here too, but it does not look like what you're doing. And he's like, there is, however many years that you have been working on the wheel goes into the pieces that you make. And yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So it's like a lot of your work, that's why you like the improv and jazz and the music, is because a lot of it is intuitive. Yes. Okay, great, all right. Well, I do want to ask, what of the sins was the most fun to make for you? And what of the sins was the most challenging? Yeah, I think a lot of people have heard me talk about greed, but on the record, that was a nightmare of a piece. And I had remade it, like, you know, I'm the kind of person that around exhibitions, or really around like any major deadlines, I like to give myself like a runway, like just for things to go wrong. I leave myself plenty of space and time to troubleshoot. This piece failed like 3 times, and I was starting to run out of, like, I was like, okay, well, I need to come up with something new because I don't have any time left. And I started realizing, because the idea was that I wanted to make Greed this whole that had a lot of pieces around it. But the problem was that the pieces that were stacked on top of the whole made it all collapse and break and fall apart. And so then, like, at varying stages of the process, even when I thought that I really nailed it, I would come in the next day and it would be like, well, I always wanted more. You know, there's like a lot of irony in the way that these pieces came together. And so I'm just like, I'm sitting there, it's like the week of the show, I'm looking at the piece and it didn't make it. I was really having a hard time. And then I realized that it was about emptiness, and it was about this hole, and that Greed is really about like a fear of loss, a fear of death, and that suddenly it all kind of clicked, and that it was a lot simpler than how I had been imagining it to be, and that it needed to be this like empty void that looked like it was ever stretching. So that was a piece that gave me the most challenge, and then the piece that I had the most fun with,
Or maybe was the most like freeing for you?
most freeing. I mean, I think they all were. I mean, I think that Greed was kind of both of those things in the end.
Funny.
But Lust also, I had started making Lust thinking that I was making Greed. It was like an earlier sketch that I had. And then once I had sort of laid all the pieces out and I was looking at it, I was like, oh, well, this is definitely Lust. And, you know, I think that people see a lot of things in my work. Labia is like an obvious one, but like mushroom gills and waves, and mountains, landscapes, because I am thinking about the human body as a landscape and the relationship between the body as a vessel and the wheel-thrown object as a vessel, like the way that we talk about pots, as boring as they are.
See, I'm gonna start calling pots and plates boring.
I'm trying to teach you a lesson, Justin. So there's we talk about the foot, the belly of the pot, the neck of the pot, the lip. So there's like all of this language that has always been right there in front of me, from like the time when I was in craft school to now. And it was just about like kind of shifting. I was like, well, I like it when because the stacks came from watching my students throw things and discard them, because you can always recycle clay. And so when a student would be done with a mug, it wasn't perfect, whatever. There's like this obsession about perfection in wheel throwing. And it's like, as soon as something's even slightly off, it's fine, it's gonna take me 5 minutes to throw a new one, I'm not keeping this one. And so there's very common to see this in wheel throwing studios, is just stacks of discarded pots. And I was walking around and I had a student who had just a very like beautiful stack of works, and I said, you should save that. Do something with it. You can even just use it to test a glaze, but like you should stick with it. And she did, and she painted each individual pot as if it looked like it was like a melting pile of like Chinese china. I mean, it was stunning. And so that was like an early kind of touchstone for me in thinking about and developing this work, was transforming these like discarded failures. So, yeah.
That's beautiful. So for both of you, I have a question. Do you see a connection between contemporary award culture and the way a society assigns moral value to our behaviors?
Can you say it again?
Yeah, sure. I said, do you see a connection between today's award culture and the 7 deadly sins, how we assign morality to the behaviors that we do? Do you see that connection?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I do.
Because you talked about how it's silly to give out awards, and so in my mind I'm thinking it must be silly then to name things as these blatant like type of sins, you know, like so like the contrast between like getting an award and then being told, oh, this is a sin, you shouldn't do that. Do you see that?
Yes, I see what you're saying now. I think that's a really interesting reflection. I think that I think that the show is just satirical anyway.
Yeah.
And so it's just pushing back on being categorized or minimized in any way. I mean, it's all just language that we made up and assigned value to. Why not play with it? Like, I think I was just thinking that if I wanted to play with the sins and I wanted to play with the idea of giving out meaningless awards. And so it's just sort of like bringing these two kind of rigid ways of thinking. Also, like, part of growing up and going to these sports ceremonies, and I was a big skier in high school, and I remembered getting like an MVP award, and I didn't really understand why. I just really liked to ski, and just seeing it, like every time I would come home and seeing it sort of gather dust and knowing that I assigned so much like worth to that object, which really was meaningless. It just was saying that I had a good attitude and that like I improved the most over the season. But like beyond that, I was like, now it's just going to sit here in my childhood room, a reminder of that I did something right, that somebody thought that I did something right. I don't know, I just think that like anything in our society that has like strict definitions or moral values, it's pointless.
So, I was going to ask you, so you talked about how society, you know, condemns a lot of these things. How do you think that religion and even politics, especially in today's society, influences the way that we, you know, view sin and shame?
Yeah, I mean, I think that growing up in like I went to prep school and I came from like a pretty conservative suburb. I mean, I was lucky enough to be raised by the mom that I have, who was kind of like, what? Who cares? You know, like to all of it, but it's still, we still existed in it. It was like, I felt like I had so many conversations with her about like feeling frustrated by not quite fitting into the mold of like the prep school that I was at. And she would be like, well, just ignore that. Doesn't matter. You need to just focus on your academics and your career, and like all the other stuff is just noise and distraction. But it was there and it was unavoidable, and I just found myself like not having like any kind of language or experience around I remember using Genesis as like a literary device for some poetry that I was writing. And because like I felt like I was a very like liberated high schooler, and I couldn't understand why people were so worried about what other people thought, or they didn't want to like they didn't want anybody to know that they had had sex, you know. And I just I didn't care. I felt like it was such like a, I just was always so free. It was freeing for me to exist within my like kind of isolated crew of friends where we didn't care, and we're all artists, and you know, very Breakfast Club vibes. But I was just always looking for ways to push back against like the institution that I was around, and like the stuffiness of like suburbia, which never really felt comfortable for me. And so I think I was always able to identify religion and these feelings of shame when they would come up, like just like the 6-inch rule at like make room for Jesus at like our dances, you know, and just like not even like understanding why it was important, you know, because like in my own context at home, it was, I feel like my mom like raised me with these values that were just so advanced. Like she would always be like, well, your gender shouldn't matter anyway. And I'm like, well, it does matter a lot actually, and people are assigning me like roles that I have to embody because of the way that I look. And she was like, well, you should just prove yourself for like the talented, intelligent person that you are, regardless of what people assign you. Just do it anyway, you know? And I think that was really important for me, but it was something that I struggled with.
Shout out to mom.
Shout out to mom.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
So one of the questions that the exhibition asks is who benefits from shame? And so do you feel like, how would you feel the answer to this question, you could answer it based off of the themes on this exhibition? Who benefits from shame?
Who benefits from shame? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's an important question, one that I'm still mulling over. I think somebody asked me that at the opening, because there are moments where it is good to feel shame. I don't have many of those, or so I'm just not sure.
You feel like your relationship with shame has changed over time as you've worked on the exhibition?
Yes, yeah, I think so. I think that it was just like the more times that I would talk about the show or bring people into my studio and try to work through some of, we're doing a dinner here next weekend with the Cha-Cha Club. Liz and Daniel are some of my really good friends, and they came into my studio in preparation for the dinner because they're basically doing a 7-course dinner based on each of the sins. And Liz kind of sat me down and was like, what do you think the strengths and beauties are of each of these sins? Because we're so conditioned to villainize them. And I went through each of them and talked about like the power in having pride in yourself, and you know, taking moments of rest. That's what sloth is about, just going super slow and taking care of yourself. And then, you know, envy being like just creating this like energy, this like motivational force. I can see like positive parts to all of them.
Yeah.
Gluttony being like embracing desire, and lust being about like never-ending like intimacy without an end goal.
I love that.
I love that a lot. Wow. All right, so if each person that saw
the trophies and the display and just the entire concept, what's the one thing that you could like hope that they would take away from the exhibition?
I really liked hearing the ones that people felt the most drawn to, and when people were really excited to then take a pin that was based off of the piece that they liked the best, and then kind of talking about how obvious or not obvious it was that each piece was the sin that it was. But I think maybe the most important part would be if somebody were to rethink a moment of shame that they would have around one of these pieces in the way that I did with all of them.
All right. Justin, do you feel like this exhibition has allowed you to view sin, shame, and morality differently?
Yes.
Yeah. In what
Definitely.
ways?
Look at a lot of the work down there, and just Mack's interpretation of them has changed how I look at it. Even they brought up greed. I always thought of greed as just wanting more and more and more, and not thinking of it being like a void that's empty that can't be filled, or even looking at pride as this amazing trophy. I never thought of it in that way, and it being visualized in those ways. So just like reorientated things a little bit for me. And also, just like you brought up the shame aspect, it's like, okay, why should I be shameful of being prideful of myself? Why should I be shameful of lust? Everyone lusts. So just like rethinking everything. So, yeah.
That's great. That's beautiful. All right. Well, the last question that I have, what's next for you, Mack? What are you hoping for in the future? Do you have any work that we can support later on, or are you just chilling right now?
I'm going to take a break for a little bit after the show comes down, but I'm hoping to travel a little bit this summer. There's a residency that I am applying to in August. I am doing a show at IIT with Sydney and Issa in the fall. And yeah, I'm just going to be teaching in Chicago.
Where do you teach? Or is it like specific?
I teach at the Elmhurst Art Museum and at my studio at the Digs.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Great. I definitely. Is it open to like anyone?
Yes, you can take a class with me if you want to learn how to do this on Tuesday nights at the Digs. Yeah.
Okay, great. All right. And Justin, is there anything we should expect from you coming up?
Yes, actually. Mack already brought up next week we have the Dinner with Cha-Cha Club here. It's going to be amazing. Looking super forward to that one. And then we're going to have a closing reception on the 19th here, which is, again, going to be super fun. Control Zor is going to be spinning, so come out, have a good time. And then I didn't want to do this, but unfortunately ended up having like programming for like 4 weeks straight. So my next project after this is Outspace Chicago is having their Building Legacy opening of their new space in Austin. So I'm like curating the archives for that and putting up the exhibition for them.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Actually, do we have like a couple minutes for a few questions, if anyone has any? Or are we all good?
Any questions?
Yeah, I would love for you guys to ask questions. Don't be shy. Adam?
You told me about the difference between Curator and Rust.
Mm-hmm.
I know that one was just the clay body that was not glazed.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder how you choose the specific types of clay for each one and how those might vary.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think one of the things that I brought up when we were talking is the idea that for me, the form is like the most important part. And so when I think about surface design, I'm trying to think about the ways to accentuate the form in the best way. And with Lust, it felt really important to me to keep all of the lines really clear. And I realized that the best way to do that was to leave the clay body bare. And I was also using this like darker clay body because originally I was thinking about putting a blue on top of it, and the blue kind of becomes iridescent on like a red or black clay body. But ultimately, when it finished drying out, I realized that it was complete, and it didn't need anything. But I wanted to bling it out a little bit, which is why I added the gold rings.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. But I think with Gluttony, I definitely wanted it to be kind of like baby pink, looking like a cake or like frosting. Envy, I didn't realize the glaze was going to become so kind of vibrational, I guess, is how I think about it. And that was why I named it Envy, was because it felt like it was sort of bubbling, like a barely contained rage. Wrath, I wanted to have it feel like it was dripping and melting. I had this idea to make it look like a carnivorous plant. And Pride, I wanted to feel like iridescent gold, like sun-baked. And Greed, I knew it needed to just be like a void, like a black hole. And so I wanted it to almost feel like something you'd see in outer space. And I approached that with like a matte chrome glaze. And I like the way that each of the pieces are spotlit, but like in varying lighting, the glazes all do different things. Yeah. Sydney?
I just wanted to thank you for the vulnerability of your work. You're super generous, like with your explanations, and for your humor, so I think that's something really wonderful. And for people that also like share these same kinds of questions, there's something selfless about you, like putting yourself out there. So I just wanted to commend you first. And my question is, do you think the lens of morality is going to continue to inform future works, or do you feel like you've satiated that with this series?
I think maybe I never like closing doors, like on conceptual frameworks, but it does feel like a complete thought for me now. But I'm sure it will come back. I think that it's something that I will be fighting tooth and nail my whole life. So it might come back in some other body of work. Yeah.
Yes, I had a question. Thank you so much. I love to hear conversations around art as like a vehicle for catharsis.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, what ways would you say you feel freed up now, like freer?
I think that I feel excited about next steps, about feeling like this was a successful way of applying this like visual language vocabulary to a narrative. So I feel like there are other narratives for me to explore. I feel excited about collaborating with musicians, maybe doing like a whole show of pieces inspired by working with different musicians. But I definitely feel like I've let go of some things thanks to making this work. And I think also developing this way of working has been freeing for me in terms of like my practice as a wheel thrower, because it's given new life into these like, seemingly only functional forms. breaking away from the utilitarianism of wheel throwing. I don't think that most of the time when I describe what I do, it feels like I want to say that I'm a potter, that I'm a wheel thrower, but it feels like now I stick with sculptor because it's like it feels more accurate. But I am both, and I'm not going to lose the boring pots ever.
I know that's right. Okay.
So the sculptor Mack Baker is scorning me?
Yes, yes. You're being condemned. Are there any more questions, or are we good? I think we're good. Thank you all so much
Thank you for coming.